Welcome everyone to the Wisconsin Faith and Solar Initiative webinars, stories shared. We are happy today to have Mark Hanson here with us, sharing the story of Holy Wisdom Monastery in Middleton. I'm Huda Alkaff. I'm the founder and director of Wisconsin Green Muslims and the coordinator of Wisconsin Faith and Solar Initiative. So thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. And please share with us the story of Holy Wisdom Monastery.
Well, thank you, Huda, for that introduction, and I am very pleased to be here today. I will note that I volunteer at Holy Wisdom Monastery, and in addition to being a volunteer, I was also part of the team that constructed the monastery, designed and constructed in 2009, and then later added the a big solar addition in 2014, and is now considering a further solar addition. There are three themes today that to think about. One is, in thinking about care for the earth at the monastery, the approach has been taken to think rather broadly about sustainability, resilience, energy efficiency, and solar all together. The second point or theme is, in doing this, doing it in a financially responsible manner. We all have financial constraints, and Holy Wisdom Monastery shares that need. And finally, that as we consider moving forward at this point in solar, with solar, that we now consider batteries as this new element in our solar picture. So a few words about Holy Wisdom Monastery. It is the home of the Benedictine Women of Madison, which is a community of ecumenical Benedictine communities weaving prayer, hospitality, justice, and care for the earth into a shared way of life. This care for the earth is an ongoing, evolving way of living. The monastery building, retreat and guest house, hermitages, and other buildings can be seen as living laboratories, or are seen as living laboratories, for sustainability and resilience, and of course, energy efficiency and solar. The monastery is located on County Road D in Middleton, Wisconsin. This is an image of the main monastery building that was completed in 2009. At the top of the roof, you can see the initial 20 kW of solar that was installed in 2009. This is part of a living laboratory. Some recent history at this living laboratory. I'll note one element was the design and construction of the 34,000 square foot monastery building. And as part of that commitment for the care of the earth, it was a LEED Platinum building. It included a geothermal design looking to avoid use of natural gas and that carbon footprint. It included, as I mentioned, a 20 kW solar PV system. At that time, the sisters would have liked to have added more solar, but the reality was solar was very that price of solar in Wisconsin had dropped 70%. And at that time, it became an appropriate time to add 125 kW of additional solar. And it was done using third-party green-minded investors to take away that upfront cost burden. And at that time, 80 kW of DC, direct current, was added at the monastery building, and 45 kW DC of PV was added at the retreat and guest house. At this point in time, there is another planning effort going on, and it's for adding more solar and battery with the vision of either now or not too far into the future, reaching net zero at the entire monastery and retreat and guest house. The preliminary sizing at this time is estimated at adding 180 kW PV of ground-mounted solar to serve the monastery building, adding an additional 85 kW of ground-mounted solar to serve the retreat and guest house, and for the first time to now include a battery energy storage system with a capacity of about 130 kW AC in terms of capacity, and in terms of the storage amount, 232 kilowatt hours of storage. Those are both approximate estimates at this time. This image is of the two main buildings at the monastery. In the upper right image is the monastery building itself from 2009, and you can see both the solar that was added originally, as well as the additional 80 kW of solar that was added. So all the solar is on the roof. Some you can see is on a southwest facing sloped roof, and the rest of the solar panels are on the flat roof. The lower left of the image shows the retreat and guest house. And there you can see the 45 kW of solar, most of it south facing, but you can also see some west facing solar PV on the roof on the far left of the image. This image is a close-up image of the solar panels on the monastery building. And you can see both the flat panels on the flat roof, as well as the panels that are on the sloped roof in this image. As you can see, it's a very clean installation. And I would add, it's an installation that as you enter the monastery grounds is almost invisible. You would hardly know there was solar up there. You can only see a bit of the peak of the roof as you drive into the monastery. In terms of combining mission and financial responsibility, the approach taken by the Holy Wisdom Monastery is to use available grants. This is, of course, a shared approach with many other communities in Wisconsin, including communities of faith. And, sources of funding can include Focus on Energy, and of course, at this point in time, Solar for Good. And so at the monastery, they use this approach along with green-minded third-party investors. And the reason for doing this is to take away that need to find the capital up front to install the solar and be able to install that without that upfront cost burden. And I would note that at this time, this approach with third-party investors, it is available in Wisconsin, but only in some of the utility service territories, and will typically only be applicable for larger installations, say typically 150 kW and larger. The following slides describe the estimated and actual financial performance of this approach using the example of the 2014 solar PV edition. In this image, you can see you can see year by year, you can see the cash flow position for the monastery for this $354,000 PV system that was added at the time. And if you look at the graph, you can see the annual cash flow is in the blue line, and the cumulative cash flow is in the red. And if you look closely, it's hard to see because the red line is kind of overlapping the blue line, but it was anticipated that there would be just a slight negative cash flow in each year until a system was bought out in year 15. System would be bought out at about $100,000 or a little less than that. And at that point, your mortgage payments, if you will, are taken care of. Investors are no longer involved. It's bought out. And you can see the cumulative cash flow is moving on up close to $400,000 by year 30 in the red line. So the question is, well, how has it worked out? And we'll turn to the next graph to take a look at this. In fact, it's not a graph, it's a table. And this is a table that shows the actual financial performance related to the 2014 solar system. You can see in year 2013, that was before the solar system, you can see the monastery electricity use, the electricity cost of $61,000 a year. In 2014, the solar system was being installed. And in that year before the system went into production, the monastery's electricity bill was about $66,000. 2015 was the first full year of solar production. And you can see that the amount of electricity purchased from the serving utility dropped to 300,000 kilowatt hours roughly. And the bill, in terms of what you paid to the utility for that electricity, dropped to $45,000. In other words, you had a $16,000 gross savings. And after paying, if you will, your mortgage payments on your solar to the third-party investors, you still had a net savings of $1,766 in that first year. In other words, the actual performance was better than the preliminary estimates. That admittedly were done cautiously, and you always want to approach these things in a cautious manner. So in other words, by investing in the solar in this manner, the sisters had to take none of their own capital, their own funds to buy the solar. They could use the investors who could leverage the federal tax credits and the federal depreciation schedules, and they could realize in year one a net savings to the monastery. I will close this exciting story with a simple invitation, and that is you are welcome to come to visit Holy Wisdom Monastery to learn about the PV systems, the energy efficiency, and the many other activities in general, and certainly in their activities in care for the earth. The website address is noted on the image. For technical questions on energy and solar, you are welcome to contact me, Mark Hanson, and my address is noted, email address is noted on the screen. So I thank you for this time. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I would certainly encourage you to explore solar both now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for this presentation, for sharing the story of Holy Wisdom Monastery. I personally have visited this place and did the tour. It's very informative, very inspiring, and we thank you all for your work. And again, this is Wisconsin Faith and Solar Initiative, sharing stories about solar, faith and solar in Wisconsin. I'm Huda Alkaff, founder and director of Wisconsin Green Muslims and coordinator of the Wisconsin Faith and Solar Initiative. Thank you very much, and take care.